What would happen if we had all our needs met at arm's reach, without having to make any effort to obtain them? In a confined place, without the ability to leave, with only a few enjoying the privilege of living in this utopia concerned only with reproduction. This would lead to a significant population increase, growing exponentially over time. The number of inhabitants in this space would keep rising, and the more individuals there were, the more the available space would shrink to the point where we would be bumping shoulders with every step. Everywhere we looked, there would be people, and more people, giving rise to disputes, fights, and conflicts. These would escalate to the point of altering our behavior, triggering more violence, deaths, and destruction as time passed. We would become more concerned about our own well-being than that of others, even to the point of taking the lives of infants, women, and men. Families would turn on each other, killing one another in cruel and ruthless ways. Reproduction would come to a halt until the population peak dropped, and deaths began to be counted in the millions. And all of this would happen for absurd reasons, as our needs would still be completely met at all times. At some point, the few survivors would lose all interest in reproduction, caring only for themselves, sleeping, eating, and defending themselves from others. This would ultimately lead to the extinction of the human race, ending our own existence due to our selfishness, leaving behind only traces of what we once were and how we met our end. Pretty catastrophic, isn't it? But what if I told you that there's an experiment that demonstrates all of this? An experiment in which a utopia was created, only to collapse along with the species inhabiting it. This is the famous behavioral sink, also known as Universe 25, a study conducted by John B. Calhoun. So let's dive into the video. Universe 25 is the name of an artificial environment created by Calhoun, an ethologist who worked at the NIM in the 1960s. His studies focused on what would happen if animals had all their needs met: food, water, shelter, and an ideal temperature. The only limiting factor was space. As this became scarce, their ability to move freely was affected. For the experiment, he used rodents due to their high reproductive rate and fast metabolism. The experiment was named Universe 25 because it was the 25th time he conducted it, each time introducing significant changes. His study was titled Population Density and Social Pathologies. For his research, he designed a 27-square-foot, 3 feet tall enclosure where the rodents could climb but not escape. They were provided with unlimited food, water, sanitation, nesting materials, and spaces to build their nests. Humidity and temperature were kept at optimal levels. In short, it was a paradise for the rats, designed so that their only concern was reproduction. The experiment began with 4 pairs of healthy rats and lasted for 1,471 days, almost 4 years. During this time, their needs were met daily. The colony's evolution was divided into 4 phases. In the first 104 days, the rats started forming families, adapting to their environment, and reproducing. The second phase, from day 105 to 315, was a time of prosperity. Every 55 days, the population doubled. Social groups formed, with a dominant male protecting his family. The mothers reproduced without issues, and territories were established. By day 315, the initial population of 8 rats had grown to 600 in this habitat. In the third phase, from day 316 to 560, the time it took for the population to double increased. Instead of 55 days, it now took 145. This was because the males spent their time competing with each other to conquer and maintain territory for reproduction. As a result, many abandoned their role and lost attractiveness to females, reducing the reproduction rate. Meanwhile, fertile females tried to take over the abandoned male role of protecting the nests, which shortened the nursing period. As a result, many offspring were abandoned, attacked, or even eaten by their own mothers. The population reached a peak of 2,200 individuals living in an anarchic, violent world with almost no sexual activity. That's right, the utopia had already begun to collapse. Starting from day 560, more mice were dying than being born. In the fourth and final phase, from day 561 to 1471, violence between and within groups reached its peak. Cannibalism intensified, not only among the young, but also among adult rats. Reproduction disappeared completely. A group of males barricaded themselves in one area, dedicating themselves exclusively to extreme body care, grooming their fur all day. They showed total apathy, avoiding fights and displaying no interest in females whatsoever. Most of the females born also had no interest in reproduction, and the few offspring that managed to be born rarely reached adulthood. In fact, a pup born on day 600 was the last to reach maturity. By day 920, no more births occurred, and the average age of the survivors was 2.5 years. On the final day of the experiment, only 27 rats remained alive, 23 females and 4 males. The youngest was 987 days old. Thus, the experiment concluded, proving that a species can reach its end due to overpopulation, even when resources are abundantly available at all times. The conclusion was clear. Overpopulation destroyed the social and mental structure of the mice, despite the abundance of resources. Calhoun stated that the collapse occurred when the mice stopped behaving like mice, initiating their own extinction. Even when the surviving mice from Universe 25 were placed with others unrelated to the experiment, their behavior did not change. During the research, attempts were made to introduce new specimens to correct the decline, but the situation was never reversed. This experiment is real. I haven't included the research paper because it's old, and I haven't found it online to share, but it's not a creepypasta. This actually happened and was studied. I'll leave the study's abstract in the description. This makes us reflect. Could humanity be approaching the same fate? Our conditions may be different, and our universe larger, but just look at megacities like Tokyo. There, people walk shoulder to shoulder, personal and professional goals take precedence, and reproduction is no longer a priority. It has become a city with a high number of asexual individuals. It's not hard to imagine that we might be heading toward our own population collapse. I could end the video here, leaving you sleepless and questioning whether what you do is truly worthwhile. But since this is a science channel, let's look for a solution. Will this really happen? Or could it even be possible? Let's start with the obvious. The study was conducted on rats, not humans. Our behavior is much more complex. Even if the study had been done on monkeys, there would still be significant differences. While there are similarities, we exhibit different behaviors. For example, humans are creatures that feel compassion and try to help others. Not everyone, of course, but we do have an instinct for support. Otherwise, and I hope I'm not misunderstood here, people with disabilities wouldn't be able to survive. In most species, however, the principle of survival of the fittest prevails. In nature, there is no place for the weak. But humans, although we are animals, are different. We show compassion, have the ability to feel empathy, sadness, attachment, love, and even disgust at certain events. These are human characteristics that, although some may seem to lack them, are generally present in our species. So much so that we don't only care about our own species, but also many others. That's why humans are the only animals that have domesticated others. One could argue that this was done for productive and protective purposes, but why is it that only humans and not other species have done this? In fact, in contrast to the study we discussed today, there are others that show that humans don't reach such extremes. In one experiment, a group of students was kept under similar conditions. I assume they were social service interns, and they did not reach the extreme seen in a rat experiment. However, this is where a problem with that study arises. Our metabolism is slower, and our average life expectancy is about 70 years, not the 3 or 4 years of a rat. This means that, to conduct an accurate investigation, a group of people would need to be locked up for 100 years with all their needs met to determine if this would happen. But to do so, we would have to break every ethical and moral rule, effectively abandoning our humanity in the process. It would also be crucial to determine if this phenomenon occurs in other species. Perhaps we could use another model, like insects whose behavior is simpler and whose group habits are much larger. And if it were found that the same thing happens, then how could we prevent it? This is something Calhoun tried to understand and remedy. But as often happens, when something very important is discovered, everything else is overshadowed. And if this fate is inevitable, we are certainly moving closer to it. Not just humans, but also the species we have tried to help. This is because by creating nature reserves where a utopia is established to save a species, we prevent its predators from feeding on it, which only leads to the same outcome. In this sense, controlled hunting has become a way to fulfill the role of natural predators. In the end, only time will tell whether humanity will face this fate, leaving behind as vestiges of its existence its art, architecture, writings, discoveries, and everything we once were, or if we will be able to prevent it. All we can do is wait and be the architects of our future. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like and share it so more people can discover this channel. I'll leave my social media links so we can stay in touch and you can receive important announcements about the channel. If you're new, I invite you to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching this video. See you next time.